Oh, hello. Today we are talking about my ranking of the ARCs that come out in Q3 for 2021. So these are advanced reader copies that I got for review, and every quarter I like to check in and just let you guys know sort of what my thoughts are on the new releases that are coming out. I try to do it as early in the quarter as possible so that if some of them are still to come out, you have the opportunity to pre-order them if you want to, or take my opinion under advisement. I don't know. Some of you actually care about what I think about books, so I try to provide my thoughts in a timely fashion. I also always review pretty much every book I read over on Goodreads, so if you ever wonder what I think about a book, or if I've read it, you can go look over there. So with that being said, we'll start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. I think there's like 15-ish books to get through, so let's get to getting. The bottom one is going to be The Stowaway by James Murray and someone else. I gave this 2.5 stars, which would be like a B- for me, like a C+, B- somewhere in there. And normally that would probably make me say like, I don't necessarily recommend this, but in this case, I think if you go into this book kind of knowing what it is, I would still probably recommend it. So basically it is a serial killer thriller, and the big hook is that it is set on a boat and there's a serial killer on the loose, and our protagonist has encountered this serial killer in the past, and they're like the only ones who know that it's him, and they're trying to convince everybody that is who is doing the murdering. And I think the problem with this book is just that it is very typical commercial fiction insofar as like the writing is not particularly nice and the characters are very underdeveloped. So I think the plot is fun. And if you go into it with a mindset of like, this is just sort of an entertainment, a pure entertainment, not really meant to be something that sticks with you, I think you can still enjoy this. I know I did. I just think that it wasn't it wasn't as good as other commercial thrillers I've read that do something similar. So for that reason, I felt like couldn't quite give it a 3-star. But if you're okay with that, this is definitely pretty fun. So yeah, I would say go into it with the right mindset and you can have a good time with it. Next, I'm going to say The Runaway Heiress by Meg Tilly. I gave this 3 stars, and this one was just fine. It's a little forgettable, but I always do just sort of like the way Meg Tilly approaches her romantic suspense books. I think that the problem with this one, so the setup is basically that there's this runaway heiress who is masquerading as an assistant to this Hollywood hotshot guy, and it's sort of like a sleeping with the enemy type plot where she's on the run from her abusive ex, and shenanigans / murderousness / falling in love ensues. The problem with this one that kept me from really enjoying it more was that the hero I did not like. He was so unpleasant and I didn't want her to be with him. So that kept me from like fully rooting for the romance piece of this, but I did like the suspensey type plot pretty well. Then we have Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This one was interesting because it had some of the things that I really loved about The House in the Cerulean Sea, which was his big kind of like breakout hit last year, in that it still has that very like light, whimsical tone, which I think he is very skilled at pulling off. I don't know that there's many authors who can sort of execute that kind of whimsical humorousness to his writing. I think that is still present and still effective. And he also just, I think, has a real gift for writing very endearing, interesting characters, and that is also present. This one, however, I think the plot is a little bit of a mess. It's kind of a take on Scrooge, like where he sees what his life is like once he's dead and then gets a chance to change. It's that kind of a plot, and I just don't know that that really made a lot of sense. I thought the pacing was a little bit all over the place. It has enough charm that it kind of carried me through some of that, but overall definitely didn't think it was as good as House in the Cerulean Sea. But if you just like his writing style, I think if that's the main thing you're coming from, you'll probably feel like I did, which was not my favorite, but I still had a pretty good time. So 3 stars, it's a B. Next we have Stephen Graham Jones's My Heart is a Chainsaw, which is his latest horror novel. And this was my first read from him. I gave this 3 stars, and there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in this book. Kind of similarly, I guess, to Under the Whispering Door, even though tonally these are polar opposites. I would say that I felt like it had a pacing issue, which in this case I do think may have been purposeful. So it is a horror novel that is meant to mirror sort of a slasher thriller, and our main character is obsessed with slasher flicks. They write like these essays about the genre that are kind of interstitials, which I actually thought that was pretty fun. And so I think that the pacing potentially was meant to mirror a actual slasher movie where it's a very slow build to then this sort of like orgasmically violent cataclysmic moment. And that was how the book felt. However, I just felt like the build up to get there was awfully long, and it is definitely literary horror. So if you are looking for something sort of like light and readable in that genre, I would not steer you towards this. But if you like sort of a higher quality writing, something a little bit more meditative and, you know, thematically there's a lot there, this I think will do ya. But this was my first Stephen Graham Jones. Didn't love it as much as I hoped to, but I think there's definitely an audience for this book. Then moving into 3.5, I'm going to say On Location by Sarah Smith is my next one. This is a contemporary romance. I really like Sarah Smith's writing style for contemporary romance. It feels very bingeable, easy breezy, kind of almost like fan fiction, but in like, I mean that very positively. It's very readable. However, for her last 2 books, she has done this thing where like I'm cruising along, really enjoying it. This one is set on location for like this travel show. So like they're shooting in these national parks in Utah, which is where our heroine's grandma took her before, like on a road trip when she was a kid, and now she's no longer with us. So it has like a lot of emotional resonance for her. And I thought that that was really just fun. I like that as a setting. It's a workplace romance where she was seeing this guy who ghosted her, and then she comes to the set and she finds out that he's the new production assistant she hired. I thought that was fun, and it has a lot of interesting themes about like workplace sexual harassment, Hollywood's place within that. Like there's a lot of interesting things and fun things happening in this book. However, for the last 2 books, she insists on doing this thing where there's these big miscommunications towards the end, and they just feel really ham-fisted and really just like unsatisfying. I don't love a miscommunication trope, but it can be done well, and I just think that these are not done well. So it bums me out because it dings down what is otherwise a very enjoyable contemporary romance. That being said, if you can overlook that, I still had a good time in this. Obviously, I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked it. It's like, oh, this is such an easy one to fix. I wish that you would just fix this. Okay, and everything from here on is a 4-star or higher. So next I have The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. This is a really difficult book to rate and review. I'm gonna tell you that I have chosen to assess this book basically as general fiction, not as a romance. I think if you are reading this for the romance and you are expecting something in the same vein as the first 2 books in this trilogy or in this series, I think you will be disappointed. And I think the romance is definitely the least successful part of this book. However, as sort of a general fiction type book about family and loss and grief and finding your voice with a heavy romantic element, I think it's pretty good. And it's very readable and very emotional. There's a lot to like about this book. So I gave it 4 stars, but I do just want to make sure people know what kind of book they're getting into before they read it, because I do think as a romance, it's not very satisfying. Also, content warnings for like depression and emotional abuse and suicidal ideation. There's a lot. This is a heavy book. This is a heavy book that's pretending to be a romance, and it's not, but it's still good. Up next, we have Battle Royal by Lucy Parker, which was a really fun contemporary romance. My chief complaint about this book is that there was just too much plot stuffed into it, but it was very charming. The setup is the hero is sort of like Paul Hollywood from the Great British Bake Off, and the heroine was a contestant on that Great British Bake Off like show. They did not like each other at all during that season because he is a very like traditionalist and she is very much all about innovation and whimsy, and so they kind of clashed on that. Subsequently, they have businesses that are across the street from each other that are in competition, and now they're both competing to get the commission for a royal wedding cake. So that's sort of the setup, and shenanigans ensue from there. It is very, very fun, but like I said, I just felt like it was a little full of plot, which messed up the pacing. But if you like a Grump Sunshine, if you like a baking romance, this is really fun. Then I would say For Your Own Good by Samantha Downey would be my next pick. This is one you shouldn't know much about going into it because it's just a really fun, satisfying thriller. The premise, or sort of the pitch of this, is that it is set at an elite school with this teacher who has gotten Teacher of the Year. His name is Teddy, and he's like a know-it-all. He thinks that he knows what's best for everyone. He's up in everyone's business, and he is so hateable. I have rarely hated a point of view character more in a thriller, but in a delicious kind of way. Murderousness starts happening, things progress from there, but overall, this was really fun. If you like sort of that elite boarding school or elite school setting, and you like a thriller with some fun twists and turns, I definitely recommend this. I will definitely be seeking out more from Samantha Downing because I particularly liked her writing and kind of her overall voice. Then another thriller is How to Kill Your Best Friend by Lexi Elliott. This one is set in a resort in, I think, Thailand. It's like in this remote village setting. And all of these friends come to the resort for one of their best friends' funerals. And she was the wife of the resort owner. She was this incredibly competent swimmer, but somehow she ended up drowning in the nearby lagoon, which has like some local lore around it. So there's this insinuation of, could it be supernatural? Like, how did this really good swimmer die? And things unfold from there. It's really fun. And again, I really liked Lexi Elliott's writing, which will make me seek out more from her because I liked her voice and sort of her overall tone in the book. Then A Lot Like Adios. This is by Alexis Daria, and I thought that this was just so fun and lovely and very readable. This is the sequel to You Had Me at Hola, which came out last year, and I like this one even better. I think this felt a little bit lopsided to be more about the hero than the heroine, but it's like a second chance at love type story. They were childhood sweet best friends moving to sweethearts, but it kind of got messed up. He has a lot of family issues and they're like thrown back together, and it's just lovely. It's really, really fun. And they have like these little interstitials where they were kids writing fan fiction together that I thought was super cute. Yeah, overall this one was just super fun. Next we have Say Goodbye by Karen Rose, who I really have enjoyed her romantic suspense. She's like my second favorite romantic suspense author after Nora Roberts. This is the third book in her trilogy in Sacramento, where we have been following all of these different plots. So all of it has to do with this cult in Northern California, but it all, like each of these books, have different kind of pieces of the story of finding where this cult currently is, bringing them to justice, etc. And it's my second favorite of the three. I really particularly like the romance in this one. It's like the last one, it's sort of friends to lovers, childhood friends to lovers. This one though, angsted so good because there's like, they both have been married or like engaged or married, and both of their significant others have passed in very dramatic situations. So they also have like all this guilt around that, and like the girl is, you know, kind of reached the conclusion that she can't keep going just as his friend, and it's a whole thing. So it was very deliciously kind of angsty and lovely. So I definitely enjoyed that. So that one was very satisfying as an ending to that trilogy, and I definitely want to keep reading more from Karen Rose. Then we have Last Guard by Nalini Singh, which is the latest entry in the Side Changeling series, which I love. I have a whole ass podcast about this series. It is sci-fi. It's like sci-fi political thriller meets romance. It's unique and lovely, and this was a really good entry. Not my favorite in the series, but I think definitely very fun, very reminiscent of the type of plot we got in book 12, for those of you who are caught up, which is my favorite book in the whole series. So I found that very satisfying. We learned interesting new things about the world. Overall, it was just really good. So this one was definitely the top of my 4 stars for Q3. Then my runner-up with 4.5 stars was The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, and I just found this to be an incredibly fun, effective thriller that was I just had a great time in this. This is not like a super plausible thriller, so if you are going into this with like your well actually vibes in place, I don't think you're gonna enjoy this book. But if you'll just go with the flow, I think this one is just super fun. The whole premise of it is that there's a support group of women who have survived serial killers, and they were like the last victim of the serial killer before... Excuse you. Did you see this cat? This cat is being a menace in this filming session. Batted my little Harley Quinn matchbox on the floor. Okay, I forget what I was saying, but I think I was telling you what this is about, which is a support group for women who survived a serial killer incident, and they are all very damaged by that experience in their own unique ways. I thought that was a very interesting kind of exploration of different plausible responses to that kind of a traumatic experience. I really liked the paranoia of our point of view character. It just felt very rompy and just like a good time. And also I felt like it had a few interesting things to say about our culture's fascination with this type of crime. Yeah, overall, lots of interesting female friendship or female relationships, lots of gore, and just a rip-roaring good time of a serial killer thriller. And then definitely my favorite arc for Q3, my favorite thing I read in advance was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I just thought this was such a fun contemporary romance that hit a lot of my all-time favorite tropes in a really satisfying way. You've got your workplace romance, you got some fake dating, you've got main characters who are in STEM, you've got sharing a hotel room, you've got professor-student-ish, but like the way it's set up, it doesn't feel icky. That is exciting. And then it has a workplace sexual harassment plot or plot element to it that you should be aware of that going into the book, but I really found it very satisfying how that piece of the plot was resolved. It felt like, yes, justice has been served. It felt very satisfying, just sort of on a venal level. So really liked the sexy times, I really liked our characters, and the writing was just lovely. I cannot wait to read more from this author. I really liked her authorial voice. So that was definitely my biggest hit of Q3 arc reading. So yeah, I hope you guys found that interesting or helpful. Definitely let me know if you've read any of these already, because I know some of them have come out. Let me know if you're interested in reading any of them. Thought about any of these? Yeah, just let me know whatever in the comments below. And I think that will do it for me for now. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon.